Good afternoon, everyone. We're super excited to have you here for our webinar on the Orange County Streetcar and SB 79 and the interplay between the two of those. Thank you for showing up. I'm really excited to welcome our speakers. Melina Cabrera is at OCTA and is in the Public Relations and Marketing Department. And Rafa Sonnenfeld is an old colleague of mine who has a lot of expertise in land use and the interplay of new housing legislation and transit and land use. So, and works as a consultant. And I'm really excited to invite both of them to share their expertise and talk about what SB 79 might mean for Orange County when our streetcar opens, and more about our streetcar and how that makes us part of truly urban California with better connectivity and better transit. So with that, I'm going to ask that we're going to divide the time in half. We'll have OCTA go first, and then Rafa will share about the land use element part of this second. We'd like to hold, we have built-in time for Q&A, but we would like to hold the Q&A until each speaker has presented, and just appreciate your patience with that. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Melina. So I will stop sharing my screen and invite you to share yours.
Okay, well, thank you everyone. Let me open up this window really quick. Oops, it looks like I lost the window. Um, okay. Sorry about that. I pulled it up so quickly the first time.
I get it.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, so hi everyone. As Elizabeth mentioned, my name is Melina and I work for OCTA. So I am one of our senior marketing specialists and I focus specifically in our community outreach side of things. And so as part of that, we do have an OC Streetcar Safety Education campaign. So we talk a lot about how to be safer on the streetcar, but she did mention that you guys were interested in learning more about just the background of the streetcar, and then what are the connection options that it'll provide for transportation. So I will talk a little bit about that and then share some videos with you. And then of course, also include those safety reminders since it is a very new form of transportation for Orange County. So, first, what is a streetcar? So, it's a short single train-like vehicle, and it travels on a track embedded in the street, and it is powered by electricity from overhead wires. So, it's a little different than light rail because it doesn't get power from the rails, but it actually gets power from those cables, those overhead cables that are you can see like in this picture. And then the other thing that's unique about it is that it will travel in the road with other cars. So that's a little bit of an overview of what it is. But in terms of connections, we're hoping that it will connect employees with workplaces, shoppers with merchants, and then students with schools in their communities. So OC Streetcar is going to be the first modern streetcar in Orange County. It's a 4.15-mile route in the heart of Santa Ana, and it'll have 10 stops in each direction. We'll have about 8 streetcar vehicles, and then the capacity is about 211 people per vehicle. So definitely opportunity to move a lot of people. So there are 13 OC bus route connections as well as 64 train connections. And so that comes from, if you look here, we have like a little zoom in on where the streetcar will be. And then the larger map shows the greater regional connections that it'll provide, particularly by train, because on the Santa Ana end of the OC streetcar, it will connect to the Santa Ana Regional Transportation Center, which not only connects to Amtrak, Surfliner, Metrolink, and those trains, but it also connects to other bus services. We have quite a few OC bus routes that connect there, as well as international bus services that go like all the way down to Mexico and such. So it'll really open up those opportunities there. And then on the other end, in the Garden Grove side, it'll connect to Harbor Boulevard, which is our busiest bus route. So it could get a lot of people from that specific corridor connected through the OC streetcar into downtown Santa Ana as well. So moving everyone forward. So we the OC Streetcar is intended to generate foot traffic, bringing consumers into the heart of downtown Santa Ana, reduce vehicle congestion and parking hassles, and then reduce greenhouse gas emissions because it is an electric powered system. And so, in terms of like the work connections, not only does it connect to that downtown area, which has a lot of businesses, and then like newer residential, but also on the other side, it also has like the Santa Ana courthouse and a lot of basically places of work. So the hope is that it will improve connectivity for all the people who not only work in the area, but then visit as well for leisure. So this is a video that we had created a while back to kind of express what that vision is for Streetcar and show that community aspect of downtown Santa Ana, because there's a lot of vibrant culture, like I said, work, schools, on all of those things kind of coincide together in 4th Street particularly, which is where it's going to be running down. So hopefully the video will play with sound. Let me just double check that that's on. Oops, that was a mistake. Okay. And then hopefully everyone can hear it.
I don't think we're able to hear it. But we can post the link to the video. We can post a link to the video in the follow-up.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. Usually I get an update here. Let me see if I can change this here. No, it looks like I can't. All right. Okay, no worries. But this video kind of shows, so then what I'll do is I'll talk through it as it goes through the visual. But it basically just shows the streetcar and what our vision is, in particular in that downtown Santa Ana area. There's a lot of businesses there. As I mentioned, the places of work. And this is the Santa Ana Regional Transportation Center that's depicted, and then people on the Metrolink, and as well as our buses. So it's really that intersection of all of those different facets of life. The school, as you saw there with OSHA, the Orange County School of Arts, and you know, a lot of great restaurants, bakeries, things like that. So definitely a lot of opportunities for connection through this particular area that the streetcar is going to be running. So with that said, I will then move on to talk about a little bit where we're at on this streetcar project, some really fun and exciting updates that we have regarding the system itself. So construction is winding down on this, and so most of you may have known that we were in construction before, but now we're moving into a totally different phase, which is the testing phase. So that means that now the streetcar is being tested in city streets. So some of you may have received the alerts if you're signed up for our e-blasts, or you may have seen it yourself if you're in the area. So basically the system testing is one piece of it. So that's going to ensure that all parts of the OC streetcar system, like traffic signals, overhead wires, and utility cabinets, work together well. And then there is the vehicle testing piece, which is where we're at now, where the streetcar will actually run up and down the project alignment and eventually simulate actual service to ensure that the system is ready to service passengers. So what to expect during the testing phase. So there is our clearance testing. So this is where a specialized truck will tow the vehicle through the streets along the alignment. And then phase 2, which is vehicle testing, a streetcar will travel along the alignment independently. And then we do send community notices about that. So if you are interested in knowing about when those activities will be happening and things like that, then you can sign up for our e-blast notices that will kind of notify the public before each of those phases of testing. So the exciting thing is that we are in the vehicle testing phase, and so the power is live on the system. So those overhead wires that electrify the streetcar have been powered on, and that's an important piece because that means that we can now test the vehicle without the towing, as I had mentioned. So it's basically moving on its own through city streets. But with that, like I said, there is a safety piece to that. So Um, it is an electrified systems, and so we do want to remind the public that they should always be treated as live if they see those wires. And then just some reminders to keep yourself and objects like drones, balloons, ladders, antennas, kites, etc., away from those electrical wires. And then do not enter any OC Streetcar utility cabinets. Um, and always assumed that downed power lines, if you see them, are energized and dangerous, and stay at least 100 feet away to so that you can warn others from a safe location and call 911 to report that hazard. So unfortunately, the sound isn't working, but I had a much more fun video that basically went over all that same information linked here, but I will go ahead and move along. This is some videos of the testing phases. So even if you can't hear it, I'll show the videos so that you can kind of see what it looks like. So this is a video of the streetcar being towed. So this is in our P right of way, and then further along in the video, you'll actually see the truck that pulls the streetcar like this. So that's what that looked like. And then the second video is where we've actually moved on to the streetcar traveling independently in downtown Santa Ana. So this was an overnight test that we did, and it was really cool to get to see it actually moving on its own. So you can take a look here, read the captions if you'd like. Um, but it was a really cool test. This first one that we did was under like a slower pace. So it was about 3 miles per hour that we took it through the streets, but it was moving totally on its own without the assistance of that tow. So that was really cool for the community to kind of see it going and moving into this later phase of testing. So anyway, with each of these tests that we do, this gets us closer to an opening date. So we're always really excited to share that with the public. All right. So with that being said, um, just again, some general safety reminders, because as we mentioned, the streetcar does travel with other vehicles. So just a reminder that streetcars are actually pretty quiet. So there are horns and bells they only use like horns and bells near stops or whenever is necessary. And they do travel in the road with cars and are not separated from traffic by any fences or barriers. They also stop a little slower. So, we try to encourage people not to do any hard stops or anything like that. Um, and they cannot get off of the tracks that they're on. So we try to remind people not just about the abrupt stops, but also where they're parking their vehicles in that area, because if you're not parked correctly, then it would obstruct the streetcar. Um, all right, and then I will talk through this as well. Those same safety reminders that I had mentioned. Um, So it kind of goes over some of the benefits. So we're hoping, less traffic, it'll be convenient, and then connect with that broader community from that earlier video. This is a little animation of the alignment and what that looks like in some of the areas that it'll pass by. Um, so when crossing the street, just those reminders that the streetcar could be coming from any direction. And then make sure to use those marked crosswalks and follow the traffic signals, because this will be, again, a very new system. If you're traveling with anything with wheels like strollers or bikes or anything, just make sure you cross at a right angle and then step over tracks to avoid shoes or anything getting stuck in those grooves of the tracks. You stay off your phone when the vehicle's near, use clear hand signals, and if you're in your car, your regular signals, all of those things. And then there are bike lanes along the route, so whenever those are available, we encourage people to take those and never travel in the middle of the streetcar lanes. And then just the reiteration of always crossing at a right angle so that no tires or wheels get stuck in the train tracks. And then, yeah, just a general reminder to stay safe if you're in a car. Um, keep that 15-foot distance. That goes back to like the streetcar doesn't stop as fast as like a normal car. So by keeping that distance, you can assure that you give the vehicle enough time to stop and try to avoid those abrupt stops whenever possible. And then there are certain sections where there are crossing gates. So if that is there at that time, then you would respect that the way you would with any other crossing gate. Um, and then opening the door too is a big one. So when you're opening the door, just make sure there's nothing behind you so you don't hit like a vehicle that might be passing by in those areas where there is curb parking. All right. Well, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. This is my contact information if anybody has any questions that they think of later on. But yeah, so we are very excited about where we're at in the project, and we're excited to share those updates on the testing activity.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I do see how it is going to be new for Orange County. For folks that have spent, time in a place like Sacramento that or Portland where, this type of transit is um where this type of transit is well familiar, it's familiar to folks. But yeah, for if you've not spent time in, more urban places that have streetcars, it is an adjustment. So even though it's perhaps sounds a little, um, didactic, I do appreciate your reminding us of the safety measures. Can you pull up the route again, just so and like maybe like go over the stops? I think that's like one thing that folks would want to see. And then one question came in about whether or not the streetcars have signal priority, which I think that means like
Oh yeah.
if it's stopped at a light, does the light go faster if the streetcar is there? Is that what that
Yes,
means?
they do have signal priority. Yeah, so that's basically what it is. So the streetcar will basically communicate with the signals. And so if it's coming, it might like that would look like basically like if it's green and the streetcar is coming, it'll hold the green a little bit longer, or maybe shorten the red. So yeah, it does have that.
Okay, cool. Um, I think we had another question here. What did this say? Is the current estimated time of opening for the regular service still March of 2027?
Yeah, so it's still early 2027 currently.
Q1 2027. Awesome. Um, okay, well, I think with that, Rafa, you have a graphic of the alignment, right?
I can pull
Okay.
up the map again too if you want to take a look. I see. Where was it? This slide, correct?
Yeah.
Oops, why did it go to the first again? Okay,
There we
there.
go.
So yeah, this is a little bit of a zoom in. So the Harbor, Westminster is that's the Garden Grove side. And then that's where it connects to the OC bus line. Well, it connects to various OC bus routes, but Harbor is our busiest corridor. And then there's Fairview, Rate, Bristol, Flower, Ross Street, and then it separates a little bit where here in the downtown area, because one side goes down 4th Street, but it'll stop again on Sycamore, French Street, and then Lacey. And then the last stop after Lacey is the Santa Ana Regional Transportation Center, and that's where it connects to this broader map in the background. Um,
Okay.
it shows all the rail connections.
Okay. So I see. So the green is the actual streetcar stops and the blue is all the potential connectivity points that you can get.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for going over that. So I think we'll turn it over to Rafa to give us the land use assessment um, and what is possible in terms of the intersection between high quality transit and housing production.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Melina, and thank you to OCTA for participating.
There we go. All right. Uh, Thank you, Elizabeth. Once again, I'm Rafa Sonnenfeld. I'm a land use consultant based in Santa Cruz, and um, and for today, I'm going to be doing an overview of how the transit-oriented development law, known as SB 79, uh, could work in Orange County. Um, So it's probably best to think of SB 79 as um, really a state floor for local jurisdictions to have a minimum amount of housing that they have to allow near high quality transit stops. And uh, I'll get into a minute on what high quality transit stops mean. But for the purposes of Orange County, uh, this has to do with commuter rail and the streetcar uh, and there could be uh, BRT or bus rapid transit stops, but as far as I'm aware, at this moment there are no qualifying ones in the county. So my presentation today is going to get into essentially uh, uh, how all of this can work together. So uh, to understand what SB 79 is, it's uh, basically state preemption. It overrides the local zoning within a half a mile of a major transit stop in an urban transit county. And it's important to know what the definition of an urban transit county is, because right now, the Orange County does not qualify as an urban transit county, but when the OC Streetcar comes online, it will. And that's because there need to be at least 16 rail stations, including light rail or streetcars, which SB 79 considers light rail, uh, to qualify a county to be an urban transit county. And that's essentially the threshold for SB 79 eligibility. So, so we start with like, what's the universe of stops in Orange County that currently uh, move towards or currently could qualify the county towards SB 79 status. And as you can see, there's 12 of them across the county. And there's also a bunch of this is all of the weekday uh uh weekday schedules for all of the lines within Orange County on Metrolink and on the Surfliner and all of the various uh lines, however they're branded. So what we end up with is uh there are 12 current stations. Uh there is a minimum requirement in SB 79 for a station to have at least 48 trains per day during the weekday in order for it to qualify as a tier two, which is the lower tier uh, high quality transit stop. And that threshold means that there's only, at the moment, 4 stations in Orange County that currently qualify uh, for potential SB 79 eligibility. And those are the Metrolink stations in Santa Ana, Irvine, Fullerton, and Anaheim. And you'll notice that Anaheim is at the very bottom of that threshold, right at the 48 trains a day minimum. So when the streetcar comes in service, which you heard here is sometime in the first quarter of next year, that will add 10 new stops to the existing 12 stops to get over that 16 stop threshold to qualify Orange County as SB 79. So all of the stops of the OC Streetcar will be considered tier 2 TOD stops because all light rail stops in SB 79 are considered tier 2 TOD stops. So that's great news. It means that once the streetcar comes online, not only will all of the streetcar stops qualify for a TOD zone around them that allows more housing than what might otherwise be allowed under local zoning, it will also unlock the possibility of the other 4 existing stations to also have TOD zones around them. So this is what that map of potential eligibility looks like across the county. You've got a whole bunch of streetcar stops around Santa Ana, and then a stop at Fullerton, Anaheim, and Irvine. I should also point out that there are no current BRT stops that meet SB 79's definition of BRT. And because SB 79 comes into effect tomorrow, and the law says that uh, unless there is a BRT stop that is in service when SB 79 comes into effect, any future BRT uh, stops that could become that would otherwise qualify in the county don't actually qualify. Uh, so any additional BRT that appears in Orange County wouldn't automatically be create a cause SB 79 to create a TOD zone around them. So because Orange County doesn't have any tier 1 stops, I'm just going to focus on what these tier 2 standards mean. And there's way more standards in this, but this is just like the very basics of like what is the envelope of a kind of project that you can build within a half mile of one of these transit stops. And basically you get at the very edges of that half mile radius, uh, buildings up to 55 feet in height and 80 units per acre, and a ratio of floor area ratio of 2.5. And then within a quarter mile, it bumps up to 65 feet, 100, and then adjacent parcels, even more density. So zooming in, this is I made these maps. These are they're as accurate as I know they can be, but there are some subtle differences between this and what may be possible. For example, in this slide, I only showed the pedestrian access on the north side of the tracks. If someone wants to get cute and say that there's pedestrian access on the south side of the tracks, then you'd have two concentric circles essentially, or and more more area that could potentially be subject to the law. Again, here's the OC Streetcar, and you'll see that for the downtown area, both the eastbound and westbound stops have their own center point and circle around them. So essentially, most of downtown Santa Ana could be subject to SB 79 upzoning. And then we've got Anaheim and Irvine. And I think I've already mentioned that SB 79 there won't be BRT stops that qualify as SB 79 transit zones. Only the light rail and the highest quality commuter rail stations will qualify. Moving on, basically the point of this slide is to point out that even when you look at a potential site that could potentially qualify for SB 79, there are various other exclusions that may apply to the site, such as rent control in Santa Ana. If the site has existing rent stabilized housing, it would be ineligible for redevelopment. You also can't build on beyond airport zoning limits, and hotel projects aren't allowed to be take advantage of the building envelope that SB 79 gets you. Now, this is probably one of the most important slides in the slide deck. So as I mentioned before, SB 79 is sort of a floor. You should think of it as like a floor of what amount of additional housing capacity the state wants local jurisdictions to plan for near these high quality transit stops. So the way that it allows cities to have the state allows cities to have some flexibility is sort of like this two-tiered approach. Leading up to the first year after the adoption of the seventh cycle housing element, which is a long way of saying probably around October of 2030. It could be later if cities are behind on adopting their housing elements. They have to adopt them by October 15th of 2029, but sometimes cities are late. They have 1 year after that adoption before there are other rules that apply. But in the meantime, between when SB 79 comes into effect in a county and or in a jurisdiction and that 2030 date, cities can essentially exclude a lot of sites that otherwise would qualify. And uh, the reasons they can exclude these sites are maybe the site already supports 50% of the existing density, or supports 50% of the density that the SB 79 would allow. Maybe the site is in a low resource area. Um, uh, the SB 79 allows cities to exclude uh, a lot of sites that are in low resource areas or in a city that has low resource areas. And then you also can exclude sites that are in very high fire hazard severity zones, which doesn't apply in Orange County, sea level rise, which also doesn't apply in Orange County, or sites that are subject to a uh, or are a that include a historic resource, or sites that are subject to an alternative plan. And I'm sure we'll have more questions on this later. But suffice to say, the point of this sort of phase-in period is to allow cities to essentially limit the impact of SB 79 until 1 year after they adopt their seventh cycle housing element. And then, so here, this is a little bit more detail on what a low resource area exclusion might mean. As you can see, virtually all of Santa Ana and all of Anaheim, certainly all of downtown Santa Ana, are in low resource areas. Downtown Fullerton is maybe half low resource area. And cities can exclude sites that are in a low resource area as long as they keep 50% of the city's total TOD capacity, or they can exclude a site that is in a zone that isn't where the site itself isn't necessarily in a low resource area, but the TOD zone is primarily low resource. What does that mean? That doesn't actually say in the law. And in Fullerton, this is a good example of how this ambiguity could cause a little bit of confusion. It's not clear whether or not the Fullerton TOD site is primarily composed of a low resource area or not. You can see the yellow is low resource areas, and the lighter green is a moderate resource area, and the darker teal is the high resource area. So is Fullerton's transit-oriented development area a primarily composed of a low resource area? Maybe, maybe not. If it is, Fullerton has some more flexibility in terms of excluding sites that are not in the low resource area. Now, getting to the permanent alternative plans, cities have the option of adopting this alternative to full-blown SB 79 at any time. But if they want maximum local control, they probably would be planning to adopt an alternative plan after their interim plan expires in 2030. But they're free to adopt a permanent alternative plan before that if they want. Alternative plans have a lot less flexibility for cities. Uh, they have to actually provide all of the zone capacity throughout the city that SB 79 unlocks, and no individual TOD zone can have its capacity reduced by more than 50%, uh, excluding the sites that are limited by fire or sea level rise or historic resources. Getting to one other aspect of SB 79 that may or may not be all that useful in Orange County is the ability for transit agencies to also override the local zoning. So this is a tool that allows a transit agency that owns land in adjacent to or within the half-mile radius of of one of these transit stops, to essentially set their own physical building envelope for those sites within certain limits. They can't be more than 200% of the baseline allowed by SB 79. I think there's also some height limits. They can't be more than 50% non-residential, and they have to have affordability requirements. There's also labor rules, and these if they proceed with this sort of zoning preemption, they don't have a CEQA exemption, so they would potentially have to produce an EIR, which can be challenged in court and cause delays, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, this is a tool if a transit agency is interested in developing land that it owns in a transit near a transit stop. If a city is not cooperative, essentially, with the transit agency's vision of how to increase ridership or revenue that they can use towards their operations. This slide just gets into one nuance, which is the land that transit agencies own. If it's adjacent, if it's not adjacent land, they can they have to have owned that land by January 1st, 2026. If it is adjacent to the transit stop, then they could acquire that land at any time and apply their own standards to it. I think the idea of this is to avoid having transit agencies kind of speculatively land bank, but it's a balanced approach, and potentially can allow some more flexibility for transit agencies to acquire some parcels that are near or that are adjacent to their transit stops in order to redevelop them. So getting back to some of the challenges in implementing SB 79, right now it seems like the Anaheim station is should be included as a tier 2 stop, but just in the past couple days there was a Metrolink meeting where Metrolink is proposing reducing service, and it's not clear to me exactly what service reductions could look like. My understanding is that there's another Metrolink board meeting scheduled for sometime in July, I think, that will where they will decide what sorts of service reductions may apply as early as October 2026. And if those service reductions cause Anaheim to drop below 48, or Fullerton or Santa Ana or Irvine to drop below 48, then those stations would no longer qualify as a tier 2 SB 79 station. So finally, for implementation advocacy purposes, it's going to be really important, and it's actually required for SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, to produce a map of where SB 79 is eligible. That map currently doesn't have any Orange County sites because Orange County isn't currently subject to SB 79, but when it is, then we would expect SCAG to update their maps. And I would also expect cities probably to be adopting their own alternative plans at some point, or adopting interim ordinances in order to minimize the impact of SB 79. That's just what cities tend to do. But if you are an advocate for housing like I am, it'll be a great opportunity to maybe push back on your city who is contemplating minimizing the impact of SB 79 and letting SB 79 do what it can do. One potential advantage of an alternative plan, though, is that SB 79 itself has certain affordability requirements. If those requirements turn out to be infeasible for development, an alternative plan could bypass those affordability thresholds potentially, um, uh, and allow projects that are consistent with that alternative plan to move forward. But like I said, there's all sorts of ways that alternative plans can reduce the capacity of a particular site that otherwise would be eligible under SB 79. So it's just going to be important to be vigilant about what these interim ordinances and alternative plans look like, and to advocate for changes if they result in less housing than you would otherwise desire. So that's it. I'll open up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rafa. So it sounds like um, the legislature, when they were passing this law, was looking to obviously increase the supply of housing, but also making sure that change did not happen radically in cities, and that it wasn't a direct, gentrification and displacement was not a direct result of the passage. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the intents, is to uh, at least give cities some flexibility to decide how they want to implement the law in lower resource areas.
Okay, cool. Do we have any questions? I haven't seen any in the chat, but there's not that many of us. So if you have questions, yeah, Elijah, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks again for the presentation. I just had a quick question about when the streetcar gets finished in March, hopefully, how long do cities have to implement SB 79? Is that like an immediate thing, or will there be other processes that'll have to happen before that?
My understanding is that it is immediate. I don't recall anything in the bill that gives a certain amount of time for a jurisdiction that later becomes subject to SB 79 uh, a chance uh, uh, to wait for like a, a period of inapplicability or something like that. But all of these jurisdictions should know right now that they likely are going to be facing SB 79 applicability, and they have months from now to be planning for these these changes. So what I would expect to happen is for cities to be working on implementation ordinances that they can adopt right around the same time as when the streetcar comes online.
Which is not that long from now. So cities will either be planning right now, or they're going to be potentially caught by surprise. Um, Mr. Underwood, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Sonnenfeld, I understand the streetcar, one of the main core transit corridors for the streetcar will be Harbor Boulevard. Is that right?
I believe so, yes. And here I actually have another map that I can share that has a bit more details on it.
Isn't the main spine of it actually 4th Street and it connects to Harbor, but it doesn't run up and down Harbor. There's like one point of intersection, I think.
Okay. Well, be that as it may, my question is, what is the SB 79 applicability at this time? Is there still a component of applicability for the property on Harbor Boulevard, currently state-owned surplus property called the Fairview Developmental Center? The city of Costa Mesa is rapidly trying to finalize the purchase of that property from the state of California, being surplus property. Is there still an SB 79 applicability component outstanding to the Fairview developmental property now being negotiated, now being scoped out by city of Costa Mesa? They already have a 3-option scoping plan for that property that by necessity will have to create affordable housing on that property. And it's their intention to put all that currently on what's left of state property, which strikes me as a little ironic. But is there still an SB 79 applicability component that can be brought to bear, leverage against that property?
I'm not familiar with that property in particular. If it is within the radius of one of the TOD tier two transit oriented development zones that I had identified, it could be subject to future applicability. But keep in mind, nothing in Orange County is subject to SB 79 until the light rail comes online.
Yeah.
Okay, but there could be future applicability even after the city of Costa Mesa takes over that 114 acres from the state.
Rafa, wouldn't a streetcar have to like actually go to that area? Like go
Yes.
to yeah, so I think because right now the farthest east it's even discussed is is Harbor Boulevard, but Fairview is, many miles south because that's Harbor Boulevard in Garden Grove, and the Fairview Developmental Center, while it is on Harbor Boulevard, it's, miles to the south. So even if there was a bus stop, right adjacent to Fairview Developmental Center, that bus stop isn't SB 79 eligible because it's just the light rail stations or the Metrolink stations.
Okay, so it's
Right.
so that state property, that 114 acres, is really too far from the footprint of the light rail for SB 79 to have
An impact.
an impact on it. Yeah,
That's my read. I mean, I'm not the expert on it that Rafa is, but I definitely think that, yeah, it's way I mean it's south of the 405, whereas the intersection of the streetcar and Harbor Boulevard is north of the 405, significantly north.
So this map isn't to scale, but this is all of the streetcar stops, and you'd have
Right.
to draw a circle has a half-mile radius around each one of these stops.
Yeah, and it's
And,
well more than a half mile away.
and
So
I'll put in the chat. I have a link to a Google Maps uh, uh, basically interactive map that you can use to get an idea of where SB 79 could apply.
Okay.
Like I mentioned before, these sites are all potentially subject to alternative plans or to interim ordinances. So these are just where SB 79 would apply if cities don't take any local action on their own to exclude particular sites, but there are lots of ways that they can do that.
Awesome. Yeah, David put in the chat, I think in reference to the Fairview Developmental Center, unless we get a bus lane down Harbor Boulevard. But because that it would have to be a bus rapid transit lane, and because that bus rapid transit lane does not exist right now, my understanding you said future bus rapid transit stops are not
Exactly. Yeah. They'd
okay.
have to amend SB 79 to allow future BRT to include new BRT based TOD zones.
Okay. Would you put the map up that you just had up?
I can what let me see if I can share I was going to share the this map.
Okay. I know I was actually curious if our OCTA friends are still with us. I know on the other map that you shared, Willowick is a future maybe, and I wanted to know if our OCTA folks can shed light on what would have to happen for Willowick to be a stop. Yeah, exactly that one. Perfect. Are they still with us? Hoping they're still with us. Okay, they may have jumped off. Um, which is a bummer because I would really love to know. Because when I look at the Willowick, it's a publicly owned golf course. Um, interestingly, owned by the city of Garden Grove, but in the jurisdiction of the city of Santa Ana. But as public land, it would be subject to um the Surplus Land Act. If they were to look to develop it, it would have to carry a higher percentage of affordability than even what's in the current inclusionary housing policy for the city of Santa Ana. And a close second to that use would be some kind of open space. And a couple of years ago, I know there was talk of looking to develop that with some open space and housing and potentially using some of the commercial revenue to maintain the open space. That was the challenge. There was, how do we make this open space usable to the community, accessible to the community, but kind of help it pay for its own maintenance, if you will. So I am curious about what it would take for Willowick to become a site. Because as of now, that it is technically a publicly owned golf course, but it is not community open space. It's you can't go there for a picnic on a Sunday afternoon. You have to pay to play golf. So in that way, it definitely, I think there's a barrier to public use. So that's where I see potential and would love to see something happen there. But that's just a little
Yeah,
personal.
maybe OCTA could acquire some of that land if it's literally adjacent to a transit stop and
It,
have
it
a TOD development that improves revenue for the agency.
that from yes, one can hope. Hope springs eternal. I do know OCTA has looked at it owns property at the Fullerton, what do they call it, Park and Ride, and the Newport Beach Park and Ride, which obviously are regular bus stops. They're not bus rapid transit or any type of rail. But I know there was discussion about them potentially building housing there as a revenue generator to help support transit use in general, right? Just like regular transit operations. So someone has had the thought about doing development on their property. So that's, as we continue to densify, I think my hope is that all of these options will at least be considered. I think it's going to be interesting because the board of OCTA is made up of obviously elected officials from all the cities. And so it really, I think, kind of operates at the pleasure of those decision makers. So as with many things, I think in Orange County that are point to urbanism, I think it'll be a slower process. But I definitely think that there's potential there. So I'm hopeful that for the parts of our county that are already served by transit, that we can make some progress towards having better transit and better connectivity for our residents. I think there was another question. Let me look. Does anybody else have a question? We're almost at time. Any other questions? Oh, yes, Elijah.
Sorry, just one more question. So when we add this new housing around the transit stops, I'd imagine it's going to increase ridership and maybe increase. I could see a tier 2 stop becoming a tier 1 stop. So can they then get access to those tier 1 conditions, or are they just permanently locked into tier 2 at the time that it's implemented?
I believe a station could become a tier 1 station if the transit headways increase enough. But that's a pretty high bar. I don't remember off the top of my head what it is for commuter rail. I think it's 72 trains a day, weekday trains a day or something like that, which is another dozen more than, or half a dozen at least more than what the current station capacity is, or the current station schedule is in Santa Ana and Irvine, and doesn't seem particularly likely considering MetroLink is looking at cutting service, not adding additional service. But if that were to change, certainly I think uh, projects could, or the tier 1 eligibility could happen if those if that level of service increases.
Right. Let me see. I think we got one more question. Nope, just a thank you. All right. Well, with that, we're at time. So I just want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Rafa for preparing this presentation and doing a deeper dive into how SB 79 will apply at some point in Orange County. Thank you to our OCTA friends who I think have moved on, but really appreciate their sharing that estimate of when it will open and also how to maintain our safety as we move into a new era for Orange County. I definitely, having traveled to places that have robust transit, I can say you do have to be mindful when crossing the street. So appreciate all of your hard work, Rafa.